How's it going, everyone? My name is Jeff Bacalar, and I've known Dan Reichert for a very long time. And
very long. That makes it sound like we went to like junior high together.
I don't know.
It feels
Maybe
like we immediately felt like we were good longtime friends, even though it may only be a short few years we've known each other. It feels like longer because of that friendly connection we immediately established. Is that what you meant?
I feel like the first time you and I hung out for a while, it was an E3, and you were clearly looking to get drunk with somebody.
That doesn't sound right, Jeff.
And you said to me, I forget what it was. You weren't even in New York yet. And you were like, "Oh, yeah, you seem like a fun guy. Why don't we go drink together?" Like,
I don't agree with these impressions of me. Maybe the what I'm saying, yes, but I think voice wise, I think I've got a richer. Was baritone the word for it? A tenor? Are those?
Well, look, this is exactly my point, and this is why we're doing this show. Okay.
Okay.
The many years that we did the Beastcast together, I was endlessly amazed at some of the questions you would ask, and it seemed like I had put myself in a situation, maybe some of the other hosts of that podcast put themselves in a situation where we felt like we were sort of tutoring you.
Yes.
Not teaching you, because no one is a qualified sort of professor or any kind of, occupation like that, but maybe in a situation where we could help you better understand a thing that maybe a lot of adults already understand.
Well, I know that that's not a new phenomenon, even, from before I was on podcasts and all that stuff and streams. Certain things I've learned slower than others. I think not because I am stupid in some ways. I understand that. But
don't say that. You're not stupid.
I had a much different experience growing up than most people. So even in like college and stuff, when I didn't have internet platforms and stuff, there were people always just being like, wait, what? You've never done X or you don't know this. So this has been an ongoing thing throughout my life. And I got to say, it's always been beneficial. It's always been rewarding. It's been a good thing whenever I've learned new things. So I do take that all in very earnestly and appreciate whenever people take the time to explain something to me.
Well, Dan, I'm going to take some time with you, and over the course of 11 episodes, you and I will go through what feels like maybe a sort of Billy Madison bit and go through various subjects of life that I feel like I just want to know what you know about certain things.
Sure.
We should tell our audience that you don't know what topic is, you know the topic, but you don't know the specifics of the topic.
Right. I specifically requested that, I don't want to know ahead of time whatever your little subcategory and everything. I know if this week's topic is blank, I know that, but I in order to preserve just the genuine, understanding of it, so I'm not looking stuff up or planning bits or anything like that. I just want you to teach me and spring stuff on me, and I will react accordingly. And honestly is the thing. I'm not going to be giving you bits or pretending not to know things I do understand. You'll get the real deal here. Straight shoot.
So over the course of 11 episodes, we will go through various subject matter, and at the end, there will be an exam. And if you pass the exam, I've agreed through a documented contract, I've agreed to give you back your MacGruber Blu-ray.
Now, Jeff, very generous of you, but would you
You're welcome.
Entertain possibly that this is a roundabout way to just get back my own property that I nicely lent to you as a friend?
There will be time for those conversations at some point down the road, 3, 4, 5 years from now, when we really sort of unpack what has taken place. But you know what they say, possession is 9/10 of the law, and lawyers say that, so...
It does soften the blow a little bit that I have literally 20-something other copies of it here, but there's something about your first one, and I need that one. That one belongs in a museum.
This is the one that got away, okay? This is the
Did
one
you
that
watch
got
it
away.
yet, by the way? Wait, can we amend it? Can we amend it live on the air? We're not live, but can we agree that if I pass the final exam, you have to watch the movie and then send it back to me?
I mean, I'm going to watch it anyway. Look, I will
It's
not...
been 2 years.
It's probably been closer to 3, but I definitely will watch it. You'd be surprised how hard it is to like really have a Blu-ray player. Like I guess all the consoles are Blu-ray. Anyway,
okay.
No. We're not getting into that.
How many devices are in your house that can play that Blu-ray right now? How many devices are in your house that would allow you to watch that on a television?
3.
Okay, you're fine.
Which is more than enough.
Yes.
We are calling this adventure into Dan's mind Back to School.
Like Bacalar.
Like Bacalar.
Yeah.
You twisted my arm until we agreed to do this, and now this is the hellscape that we're currently in. Okay. The first subject, the first episode, Dan, we're gonna dive a little bit into something called electricity. Dan, tell me what you what do you know about electricity? I know that's a very wide sweeping sort of question, but when you think of electricity, what do you sort of think of? And before you answer that, I just want everyone to know that the way this is going to work is we have 3 chapters that we're going to sort of explore every episode. But first, I'd just like to get, Dan, your sort of like gut take on when you think of electricity. What does that mean to you? You're a homeowner now. I'm sure you've had to deal with that in some capacity. Yes. What do you think about when you think of electricity?
I tend to think about something my dad said a few years ago that I think about a lot, which is like, it's beyond me. This is his words. It's beyond me how electricity isn't just flying out all over the place and killing everyone all the time. And I think that's kind of what I think about is like, look, obviously 2021, we have the means to control electricity. So it's not just spraying out everywhere. And I've said it before, but I always just picture it being like, anytime I'm like cutting a wire or something in the basement, I just picture it's going to be that skeleton with like when Blanca electrocutes someone. And so I think my mind goes to danger first, is that like, I never know. I know you can die. If I got struck by lightning, I would probably die.
I think so. I mean, again, like people survive it. Yeah.
But most likely I would die. Versus I know that my bug zapper, which is right here, is probably, it's made out of it's the same electricity. It's basically just lightning and a lantern. And I know that if I were to touch it, it would suck. Because I've gotten electrified before. I was plugging in a Bunsen burner in like 7th grade once. And I think my finger was kind of behind the safe thing and it was touching the metal. And I plugged it in and it was very, very intense. And it rattled me a little bit, but it obviously didn't kill me. I didn't lose the use of my arm or anything like that. So I think a lot about like, how does it kill someone and how the measurement of this stuff and the harnessing of it. Like, let's say, okay, for example, a windmill. A windmill I know can harness electricity, or a water wheel.
It can generate it, but okay.
Well, it captures it and
it makes it, but okay,
okay, so it makes it. So here's the thing that I really don't understand about it, and there's a lot. Trust me.
And just to be clear, there's a lot I don't understand about electricity too. But
you know,
we're learning.
We're learning.
We're in this together. We're in this together. Yeah,
I have a lot of questions. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't even know which way to go with this because there's a lot of things I don't understand.
Well, okay, let's go back to the windmill thing. I'll help you navigate it, but sure, talk about the windmill. Yeah.
So the windmill thing is like, okay, I realized that by air going through this big, like, vroom, vroom, all that kinetic energy, I believe, is like kind of built up and it's creating energy. But then it's like, I don't know how you store it because it's not like you don't shove a bunch of electricity into a silo. So I don't really know where it is when it's not going through the pipes. And I also don't know how you like turn for example, water. I have a house now. So I've learned in the last couple months. Yeah. You know how you see the handles like the ones that are just like, if it's parallel, that means it goes through. And if it's like,
you're talking about like a valve.
Yeah, if it's like a T, it's cutting it off. Like that's something I never understood. I never knew what those valves were. Sure. But, so I get that in terms of water because there's a physical thing going through pipes and moving from point A to point B.
Right, and this just blocks it. Right. Okay.
Yeah, which electricity is so much more nebulous to me. It just feels like lightning, like energy.
And so it's lightning,
not like so. Yeah, you don't turn a thing and that lets all the lightning through.
So I think what you're describing is like the opening and closing of circuits. Like that.
Yeah, and also determining how much goes to what. Like how do they make it go from the power lines on the street to my house? And it's just like, oh, we're going to give you this much. Or how do they measure it? Because it's not like an oil tank where you can stick a little rod in there and it tells you, oh, you're almost low on electricity. Like, I don't understand how it's measured, how it's regulated, how it's harnessed, how it's stored, anything like that.
So the short answer to my question earlier of, Dan, what do you know? What do you think about when I say it's a whole lot of nothing is basically what you're telling me. So I guess we started off with
I'll tell you what I do understand. I guess that was the whole question.
Sure.
I'll give you a bunch of questions about things I don't understand.
No, it's good. Because that's not what the show is. I just need you to know, the show is not you just raising your hand and being like, how does a plug work? Like, we're not just doing that.
Okay, that was called the Giant Beast Cast. Yeah, here's what I do understand. Okay. It's measured in volts and wattage. I have a circuit breaker in my house that basically that thing's job is, if too many things are, like, there are different circuits. So like this room I'm in, the studio is all on one circuit. I requested that because I knew I was going to have a bunch of stuff going on.
You requested that? What do you
I did.
Like,
I had my contractor. Okay. I had my contractor put all the circuits on just the studio.
Very fancy. Very fancy.
So we don't turn on the AC in the living room and it shuts down my stream or something.
Smart.
You know?
That was smart.
Yeah, so that happens. And so what a circuit breaker does is, if, let's say, there are certain things that use a lot of electricity, like the AC or the microwave. And let's say that's why if they're both on the same circuit and you turn them on at the same time, like our old apartment in New York, you couldn't do the AC and the microwave at the same time because the circuit breaker would detect there was too much going in, too many volts flying through the tubes, that it was a hazard and could possibly start a fire. And so the circuit breaker's job is to say, like, whoa, cut it off.
It's just break the circuit, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I know that. I understand that.
Okay. And then you did good.
Okay. And Ben Franklin, it's ridiculous to say that Ben Franklin didn't invent electricity.
No, he did not.
I don't think electricity was a thing before Ben Franklin. I think he watched some lightning and he got an inkling of, like, that looks like that could do some shit. And then he was trying to think of how to get it harnessed before windmills and stuff were thought of. And I think he did the key thing. I don't know how he realized that metal was probably a thing. That's another thing I know. Conducive to electricity is metal and skin. Electricity can flow through all that. That's why you don't put a fork in a light socket. But I think other things aren't, which is why. So I've got some dawn to dusk bug zappers outside now, trying to mitigate this bug issue here.
Yeah.
And so what it does is it stores a lot of solar electricity, which that's a whole other thing. Sure. But you know, bug zappers, you touch it and it zaps you.
Yes.
So for some fucking reason, the on-off switch, or the one that changes it from a normal light to a bug zappy light, is on the inside of the grates.
No.
So like, yeah. So
that's bad.
Cheap ones I found on Amazon.
Sure.
And so I had literally, like 3 or 4 days ago, I had to think, like, okay, I need to turn this on to bug zappy mode. And I don't want to put my finger in there into the little holes. And so I thought
assembled backwards. This thing, like,
so
I was allowed to do that.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to take like a butter knife or anything, because I knew I had heard, like, it's don't put forks in the thing, don't put metal in a toaster.
You hear about that stuff.
Don't whiz on the electric fence. There's certain things that, you know, can conduce this. And so I grabbed a plastic knife. Because to my knowledge, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, my assumption was that even if the plastic part touched the zappy part, it wouldn't conduce the lightning from the zapper to my organs.
I think you're looking for the word conduct, but yes.
Well, conducive, conducive.
I think again, just to reiterate, I am not an electrician. I've been accused of being one, but I'm not an electrician. I'm not an expert. I've just done a decent amount of research over the years, and I come to you bearing a lesson plan, if you will.
And I am eager to learn.
All right, so the first thing we're gonna watch, if you could open up your electricity book.
Yep, let me just open up my book here.
Do you have your electricity book in front of you?
Yes, I got the book cover and everything.
And if you could be so kind as to open up to the "Just What the Hell Was Ben Franklin Doing" chapter.
Yes.
That is where we're going to start our episode of Back to School, by watching the shocking truth about Ben Franklin and the kite.
Okay, I'm excited.
All right, the first video we're going to watch as part of the lesson plan today is the shocking truth about Ben Franklin and the kite.
Okay.
It was back in the olden days when $100.
This is late 1700s?
I think
Ben
this
Franklin
is
was around like at the beginning, right?
beginning of what?
The country. He was one of the founding fathers.
When you say beginning, it's so dubious. So,
Well, not like the primordial soup.
no. Yeah, I imagine this is taking place in like the mid 1700s.
Okay, that checks out.
Yeah.
Franklin flew his kite and key into a storm. Lightning did.
Seems like a bad idea.
Old Ben discovered electricity.
But wait,
Nearly every school child in America has heard this tale thanks to cartoons, storybooks, art, etc.
What the fuck?
well, by the way, this is some fan fiction ass bullshit where Ben Franklin somehow has Wolverine claws.
Which Assassin's Creed was this?
But like, look what's happening. And his kite is like an old American flag.
We got money flying through the air. Yeah, this is all right.
That's
This
actually
is on PBS?
yeah. PBS used some real questionable B-roll here, and someone got.
His backdrop looks like Bionic Commando.
No, that's what he was going for.
He didn't look like that when he was a kid. Hey, so is this around the same time? The Enlightenment, is that like the American version of the Renaissance? Were these happening at the same time? When was the Renaissance?
I think you're thinking about a different time. I don't know.
When was the Renaissance?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe
Who needs to go back to school now?
The Renaissance approximately started in the 1300s.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Jan, did you know that or did you look that up?
I knew that, but then I clarified with the internet.
Okay, because I feel like in the past on Giant Bomb stuff, I've expressed confusion over when the Renaissance was, and everybody was like, oh, Dan doesn't know when the Renaissance is. But for the record, Jan, keep in the part where Jeff didn't know when the Renaissance was. Why is it always amber?
What's that?
Why is it always amber? Like in Jurassic Park? Like, what is it about amber that's so...
That has nothing to do with this. What do you mean?
I mean, like, look, I understand Jurassic Park's fiction, but like, is there like special properties to amber?
No, I guess like the narrator just said for centuries people knew that amber had conductive properties.
Isn't amber just sap?
I guess it's just like hardened tree sap, but like, yeah, I don't know why amber is the de facto thing. Yeah. They act like, oh, everyone had an amber sack or something.
Yeah, I wonder
know.
if I looked at the ingredients of my Duracells, if it would say amber.
Probably no. It definitely would not have amber in there.
Okay.
People began to notice these sparks behaved suspiciously like that stuff from the sky. But every time lightning killed a cow, fricasseed a farmer, or torched a town, the explanation offered was supernatural, not scientific.
What?
I mean, lightning did seem to strike church.
Yeah, dude, like if you're walking around in 1710, you're just like, oh man, that bolt out of the sky again. I don't have an explanation for it. It's got to be ghosts.
So anytime something couldn't be explained, they just went right to like supernatural?
Oh, dude, of course, before like modern, education and science.
I guess that would just be when you don't know. Like, what do they say about like, something being poorly disguised magic, or the difference between science and magic is? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a phrase about that.
I know what the difference between science and magic is, though.
No, there's a famous phrase that I'm blanking on here. Oh God, I'm completely blanked on it. Question though about that king lining up a bunch of dudes to shock them all at once.
Yeah.
I assume, like, I know if people are touching each other, since like skin and organs conduct electricity,
Yes.
that like it can pass through.
Yes.
But like if I had a million dudes lined up there and I static shocked one of them, it wouldn't have that same power throughout, right? Wouldn't it dissipate?
That's a good question. You would think some of it would get discharged along the way.
Yeah.
Maybe because they were all like, maybe because they all had like swords and shit, where like they were wearing metal stuff that it conducted better.
Wouldn't it be cool if you did that and they learned that it actually made all their swords electric? So basically gave them like an elemental attack in war. And they suddenly all had electric swords. Wouldn't that be cool?
Type of building. To pious Puritans and humble Quakers, this was obviously a sign from heaven or hell, but Ben had a more lofty explanation. Tallest point in town, anybody? Pointy metal thing on top?
See, in a lot of ways, it seems like Ben Franklin was just sort of like ahead of his time in a lot of, like, he seemed to possess common sense in areas where other people did not. Like,
But
I
how
feel like
would
this
they
is,
know that back then?
well, I mean, correct. Without the context of like understanding why lightning comes out of the sky and is drawn to metal things,
Yeah.
like, why would you make that assumption? But I would also feel like what he is saying here is like, yo, the tallest thing, the thing closest to the sky is the thing that's getting shocked.
Right.
It seemed like he had maybe had, this is why I guess we talk about him still, because he had a little bit of common sense.
But the thing is, this is way before the internet and even like phones and stuff. So like there could have been 1,000 people that recognize this. But when you're just like in a village with like 8 people and some goats, I mean, if like, old Carl in the village, realized this, like, all right, Carl, shut up. Like, it wouldn't go beyond that little village. So like, there's no way to know that Franklin was the first one. He probably just had the platform. It's like he was a big Twitter user and he's taking credit. He's like one of those Instagram accounts that steals jokes, basically.
Well, I don't know about stealing jokes, but he definitely had the biggest platform. In the beginning, they talked about how he was basically like, a publisher, right? And he would write a lot of stuff. So
Sure,
he had the platform. He had the most followers in Philadelphia.
He had a blue check mark in the 1700s.
Exactly.
Okay.
Anyone? His revolutionary idea was lightning is electricity.
Well, no shit.
And even controlled. And it was time to prove it. It was
Okay, there you go. That wasn't that long ago. When I see stuff like this, I have to wonder if Ben Franklin hadn't pointed out a thing and said like, oh, check it out. Like, would we still be trying to figure that out? Or would somebody...
That's a good question. I think presumably, because look, he was not the only dude. There were other people messing around with electricity.
Yeah.
When
was Tesla? When was Tesla doing his thing?
That was like the Tesla Edison stuff. I don't know when that is, but
1900s?
it had to be late. It had to be later for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Like probably mid 18s, maybe.
It's whenever the prestige was set.
Bends from the kite to a metal key, and from the key to Ben's hand a silk ribbon, which he holds from under a doorway. These are crucial details.
This is ballsy.
For conductor, and Ben needed it and himself to stay dry. Now as rain soaked the kite and lined strands of...
Oh. Pause. I did not realize that being wet was a conductor of electricity. Did you know that?
That water conducts electricity.
Yes.
Yeah, dude.
I just always assumed don't stand under a tree in the rain was just the tree element, because I assumed the rain was because that's when lightning happens, is when it's raining. Yes. I had never put together the water. I did not know that water conducted electricity. I knew about metal.
Yes, you did.
And I knew about skin. I don't think I did.
You knew that. That's the toaster in the bathtub.
Oh, see, I know that, but I had never put together the water part of that. It wasn't right now when they said he needed to stay dry. That was the first time I'd realized oh shit, does being wet make you more electrocutable?
That's why you get out of a pool when it's lightning.
I don't think I ever thought of that. I just knew it was something you did.
The thing under the tree is not just it is the lightning, but it's also hey, with rain comes high wind. You don't want a tree to fall. There's a lot. There's many reasons to not stay under a tree during a lightning storm.
I just did not realize that being wet increased your odds of getting electrocuted.
I mean, you saw the dude. How dare you?
You know what? Actually, no. Now that I think about it, no.
I know the example. What example are you going to use? I know the example.
That I just realized that it's not good if you've got an outlet near a sink or something. You want to make sure that all these things I knew about the toaster. Don't drop a toaster in the bathtub while you're in it. Don't get water in the thing. But I never kind of put it together. I just accepted it as oh, that's just something you don't do. I never thought about the common thread of water being bad for electricity. I knew it could break electricity. I knew that if I dropped my PC into a bathtub, it would break that. But I never put all this together into water conducts electricity. I did not know that until now.
All right. Hey, if that's what you get out of this first episode, I feel like we've accomplished something.
Yeah, that seems like a good thing to learn.
Dude, the scene in Last Action Hero where he breaks the on the rooftop where the butcher you know,
At the
is
end?
like, yeah, he's all wet, and Arnold takes the conductor, that metal, that electronic, whatever the hell thing, and like puts it on the floor, the soaking wet floor.
Oh, and BioShock, you do that. That's the thing.
Yes.
I'd seen this stuff happen a million times. Again, I just think that some part of my brain didn't connect all of it. Like, again, I've seen you shoot lightning into the puddle in BioShock, but like in my head, that's just its own thing where it's like, oh yeah, that's the thing you can do in BioShock is you can electrocute pools
Oh,
of
it's
water.
like special electric juice on the ground.
No, I just think I didn't think about it beyond the fact that like that's how that works in this game, or I didn't think about the toaster in the bathtub thing beyond like don't do that because that's dangerous. I didn't think about why or the fact that water and electricity and so many different things I've seen don't play nice together. I was like, now you're explaining it. Like, I understand now. I can now suddenly think of a million different like pieces of media and advice and things like that. And it's like, oh, okay, there is that common thing of water and electricity. But yeah, it's just I had not put that all together until now.
It's great. It's a classic trope. The classic trope of water gonna electrocute you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what
Cool.
Ben does with this dumbass kite.
Drew his hand toward the key, it drew sparks of electric fire very copiously.
Right? So it's not that the lightning struck the kite, because that probably would have killed him.
Wait, so if lightning didn't strike the kite,
It just passed over it was just a very charged, atmosphere. And
okay, that I don't understand at all. So lightning did not strike it. Like
Lightning
I always
did
understood
not-
lightning struck the kite.
Nope.
It traveled down.
Nope, didn't
So
happen.
where is
it was
the
just
source?
charged in a way that he was able to get some sparks off that key. They explain
What?
it. Check it out.
Today we understand that inside storm clouds, as ice crystals are blown upwards, they bump into tiny falling droplets which steal their electrons. A positive charge builds up in the top of the cloud.
How do we know that?
The cloud becomes more negative, making the ground beneath the cloud more positive. If this difference
Pause. For the record, I understand that what they're saying here is true, and I trust scientists completely.
Yeah.
My question: how the fuck do we know that? How do we're not going up there with microscopes and looking at electrons? Like, how the fuck do we know that? How did scientists figure that out? I know that they did, but like
through experimentation. I'm sure through experimentation and things that are scientifically absolute, right?
sure.
Which again, science is flexible, right? Like it evolves because information evolves.
Sure. Yeah.
But stuff like this, you can't. No one can go up to a cloud and put a stethoscope to it and just be like, oh, take its temperature or something like that. It is controlled laboratory environments, right? Where they recreate these scenarios.
But
And
so can that happen? Like, I know you can make a tornado in a tube for a science exhibit or something, but can you make a cloud and all the exact same things and then look at it and be like, oh, they're stealing the electrons? That's
well, and again, when I talked about the constant, right? Nature loves to be in equilibrium. So lightning, from what I understand, it is just the necessary release for equilibrium in terms of what is positively and negatively charged, which I do believe they go into here a little bit. But I don't know how they discovered that's what it has to do, but that is what's happening.
okay.
I guess lightning's cool.
I know this is a whole different. Oh, it's very cool. I know it's a totally different can of worms, but electrons and neutrons and all that stuff. Are these visible, tangible things, or are these
at an atomic level, at a subatomic level?
In a microscope, could you see? Are there pictures on? Let me Google image search and see if I can find a picture, not a drawing, of an electron.
I'm sure there's subatomic microscopes, or we can do that.
See, here's the thing. I search for electron, and all I see is just a bunch of
Looks
diagrams,
targets, right? Yeah.
Or it's a Earthworm Jim thing.
Yeah. Well, I think we learn about atoms a little more, and protons and neutrons and electrons and all that good stuff about what decides what is positively and negatively charged. But stick with this, because this will explain at the very least the lightning and the key situation.
Okay.
Cloud and ground to be perfectly balanced as all things should be, evens out the charge through a column of superheated ionized gas that we call lightning. Now Franklin's kite and metal rod, wet from the rain, became a shortcut, so this unbalanced charge could jump between cloud and Earth without lightning. Franklin himself, insulated by the silk string, became the ground wire of a giant atmospheric circuit, and the sparks he witnessed proved once and for all that thunderclouds are electrified. To be clear, Franklin's kite was not struck by lightning, because that obviously would have killed him.
I love that, like, every kid goes to school assuming this is what happened, and then, like, doesn't realize that, like, no, dumbass, he would have died.
Well, if you would have asked me before this video, I would have said, like, oh, the point of the key was to prove that you can, like, capture electricity and you can harness it, and that, like, oh, even though lightning struck the kite, it was all contained in the key. And, like, I thought the point of the demonstration was, like, see, it didn't get to me because we put it all in the key, and now we can put the key inside a Game Gear and it'll work, you know?
Well, that's okay. That's one way to ingest that information. But the way that I sort of just wrote it off, I recall, was like, oh, maybe he wasn't actually flying it. Maybe he just had it, like, tied down to something and just watched it.
Sure, but I thought the whole point was to show that you could harness it. So he's like, you know, he can ring the key into a bucket, and it's like, oh, look at all this electricity I can bring to the village.
That is so stupid. No, that is just
for the record, I don't actually think that, but the concept of harnessing it and the experiment being to show that, look, we got some electricity.
This experiment was for the sole purpose of proving that lightning was electricity, and that basically, like, you know, his experiment basically led to like a lightning rod, right? Where it's like, oh, you can attract that to keep it away from other things that you don't want struck by lightning.
That makes sense. Like, oh, it's going to be attracted to this thing. Yeah.
Right. Like, you know, you ever play golf?
Not really. Not really.
So when you're on a golf course, you learn very early on that, like, if a lightning storm comes, get away from your clubs, because your clubs are metal and they're conductive, and it's like you're in an open field, and if there's lightning, you don't want to be near the metal.
That thing. I understand. That's like, I get that, and I think I'd heard that before, even though I hadn't golfed. Is there any truth to the thing about how you can't get struck by lightning if you're in a car because of the rubber?
Your car,
this is true. Oh, well, hang on. Tell me real quick. Is this a thing that you've heard of, or is this just something my dumbass concocted?
Okay.
Because
I could be wrong, but go ahead.
Okay, I just didn't know if I came up with this or if I heard this somewhere as a kid. But I definitely heard as a kid that if you were in a car, you couldn't get struck by lightning because the tires being rubber. And so I distinctly remember as a kid, I loved the rain and I loved thunderstorms. And so I would go out and play in thunderstorms. But before I did, I would put rubber bands on my wrists. And I can't remember if that was something people had told me, or if I, in my own head, thought like, oh, well, if tires protect you because of rubber, I'll protect myself with rubber bands. Did I come up with that? Or is that a thing? Is that like a childhood thing that people have?
Dan, I don't know, dude, but that is just...
I really did that every time I wanted to play in a thunderstorm. I just wrapped up in rubber bands and ran around willy-nilly. And hey, guess who never got struck by lightning? Who's the dumbass now?
The vast majority of people who have lived and are currently alive. So look.
Well, right, but they weren't all playing in thunderstorms all the time as a kid. I was, and I never got struck.
Wait. Explain that again. You would actively be like, "Oh, I'm protected because I'm wearing rubber bands. I'm going to climb a tree during this hurricane."
I never climbed a tree. I do remember my grandma yelling at me when I would do this, because I would like run around in the backyard, be like, it's thunderstorming, and I would just grab I would go to the junk drawer or whatever, grab some rubber bands, put them on both wrists, and then just run out there and just run around in the storm because I thought it was cool. Not I was being cool. I thought that thunder and lightning and rain was cool, and so I liked just being around it and surrounded by it.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that did nothing.
Right, but my question is if anyone else did that, or if I came up with that myself and no one else has done that.
I mean, well, here's the thing, right? Cars, even though I have heard that where it's like the tires are rubber, but a car can absolutely get struck by lightning. Like,
but you'd be fine in it, right?
I don't know. I think being in a car is good during lightning just because it's so low to the ground.
Not if you're driving on a hill.
Sure, but it can definitely get struck by lightning. Maybe the rubber gives you a better shot of discharging or like grounding the car. Or maybe.
Now, do you know cars can get struck by lightning?
How? I think anything can get struck by lightning.
Well, you're saying it with a lot of confidence. Have you seen it happen?
I've not seen it happen.
Have you heard of it happening? Specific instances of this happening.
I've not heard a specific incident of it happening, but I refuse to believe that a car is somehow unable to be electrocuted.
You said it with a lot of confidence, despite knowing no examples of what you're saying.
Because anything that exists and that is not buried deep, deep underground, presumably is vulnerable to lightning.
I'm good. Look, I believe in evidence.
Don't make me sound like I'm some sort of car electrocution conspiracy
Look, I don't know what you read on
theorist.
Facebook, Jeff, but look, I need to
Just
see
because
scientific
I get served
evidence.
Instagram ads about cars get electrocuted. No, I don't know. We will make a note of this.
There's
And
more
maybe-
evidence right now. There's more evidence in my rubber bands keeping me from getting struck by lightning than you knowing that cars can get struck by lightning.
Look, you've now had me. Wait a second.
Oh, what's that, Professor?
Oh, okay. Here you go, Professor. You seeing that?
Lightning in cars. Do the rubber tires on your car protect you? No, like trees, houses, and people, anything outside. Okay, well there you go. The National Weather Service says it. I was wrong. There you go.
So wait, but as you can see from this clear, true to life animation,
The South Park animation, season 1.
yeah. So again, although lightning is different, damage to the antenna, electrical system, rear windshield, and tires is common. The heat from a lightning strike is sufficient to partially melt the antenna of a vehicle.
Ooh.
It can cause what seems like a small explosion of sparks as tiny fragments of metal melt and burn. Jesus, they're getting graphic with this. A portion of the discharge may find its way into the vehicle's electrical system and can damage and destroy electric components, potentially leaving the car inoperable. The lightning may also find its way into the small defrosting wires that are embedded in rear windows. That's right.
Oh.
You know what those are, right?
Probably the stuff that when you turn on the defroster on the rear window.
Right, those little lines that run through the actual glass.
Oh, okay.
That's how it defrogs and does that sort of stuff.
Huh.
Defogs, rather. I call it a defrogger as a joke, but yes,
That's
it
fun.
defogs.
Does your kid like that?
Defrost. Anyway, there you have it.
Okay.
Cars can get electrocuted by lightning.
But you might be safe, which means that my rubber band thing wasn't dumb.
I think it was a very good try as a kid. I think.
That said, I have a weird foggy memory as a teenager of walking out to get the mail during a thunderstorm. And I remember, I feel like I would remember this. It would be weirder. I think this really happened because I have this memory and I don't think it was a dream, that I felt my hair start to stand on end, like on my forearms. And I remember looking down and seeing that. And then there was like something super duper loud. And then I thought I was like on the ground for a second. And then I remember thinking for a second, like, what the fuck just happened? Did I get struck by lightning? But I clearly didn't get struck by lightning. I wasn't hurt or anything. But I remember thinking the things or seeing my hairs and then all of a sudden getting off the ground after something really loud happened. So, like, I don't think I was ever struck by lightning, but something weird happened. I do think something weird happened, or I was close to getting struck, or hit the ground near me,
you
or
were just
something.
around something charged in a way. But I'm gonna err on the side of you were not struck by lightning.
And for the record, I don't think I was. I just have that weird memory of just like, what the fuck happened there?
So here's the deal. It's widely believed the rubber tires of a car will protect you from a lightning strike. That's a myth. Again, we're getting this from like some local news organization, but
sure.
Yeah. Anyway, it is the metal roof and the shell of the vehicle that protects you, not the tires, the National Weather Service says.
Okay,
Because
so you are
it
protected in a
conducts
car.
it away from you, presumably.
So you're protected in a car, but it's not the tires, so maybe my rubber bands weren't doing anything.
Your rubber bands were doing nothing.
Okay. Well, hey, I made it this far. So.
But you survived, so now it's all, now you can tell all the young people in your life.
And now I know the metal frame is what protected me in a car, so I just need to wear a suit of armor out whenever it's thunderstorming, and I'll be fine. That's nothing but metal.
I don't know if that's what we learned, but let's finish up this Ben Franklin video.
Okay.
But what he did do was show the world that yet another force of nature could be understood thanks to science. And that is a spark that changed the world. Stay curious.
So that's the thing. He made electricity cool, and he made people give more of a shit about it.
It was a widespread, he caused a more widespread interest in the principles of electricity.
Correct.
Okay.
That is what we learned. So I'm glad we could conclude that chapter together. I feel good about what we learned there, right?
Yeah. I mean, legit. I mean, what I said about the key and the kite, like that was, if you would have asked me 20 minutes ago, that would have been my answer, is that he was trying to harness it. I think I learned several things throughout that video.
The next chapter that you and I are going to dive a little deeper into is something we're calling, Why Are Batteries?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to watch a video about the way batteries work. And this was a thing that I will admit I did not know how a battery worked either. I
know almost nothing about batteries, lithium ion, AA, anything.
Yeah, we're not even going to get into the weeds on the specificity of the kind of batteries, a little bit on like recharging batteries and what it is. But the amazing thing about a battery that I never considered is the fact that like there's a sending and receiving that's going on in a battery through oxidation.
Positive and minus, right?
Right. And, you know, it goes back to what we learned from the kite experiment that Ben Franklin did. But
now, are batteries powered by battery acid, or is battery acid a like runoff of
battery acid?
The
seems
process?
Like an unintended byproduct of batteries, because what happens is there's chemical paste inside of a battery.
Okay. This is why if you eat a battery, it's real bad.
You don't want to eat batteries. If there's one lesson we take away from episode 1 of Back to School, it is that no, in fact, you should not ingest batteries under any circumstance.
And I knew that before this episode, so
that's why.
be impressed.
That's why you're still here. So
yes.
Here we go. Here's how batteries work. It's a TED Ed, which is exciting. It's like a TED Ed. Yeah.
You probably know the feeling. Your phone utters its final plaintive bleep and cuts out in the middle of your call. In that moment, you may feel more like...
By the way, I've never had a call where my phone has just died.
No, I was just trying to think of that, and it's like, no, it's always at least charged enough. Just carry on charger. It's not that hard.
So at the beginning, we're already saying, TED Ed, the example you used, not great.
That said, I would like that poster of just a piece of pizza.
Just straight up pizza.
Yeah. Pause. Do you think, not in our lifetimes, not in our lifetimes, but let's say the next 500 years, will science figure out a way to make an infinite battery?
Infinite?
Yeah, you never have to charge it, never have to plug it in. It's just doesn't have to be a battery specifically. It's just like, oh, well, now phones and the Switch 12 or whatever just never needs to be plugged in, never needs to be recharged, never needs anything.
No, but it would.
You don't think so?
If there is something that does that, it is not a battery.
Well, right. Well, let's say I'm just saying, like, will we be able to harness that? Not necessarily a battery, but like some new technology makes it so nothing ever has to be charged.
Sure. I mean, presumably, look, I think battery technology is very in the grand scheme of things kind of nascent. And it certainly seems like it has a long way to go, even though in the last 20 years they've made tremendous strides. I do remember during my time at CNET talking to like those engineers in that space being like, we're right on the edge of a new generation, a new sort of chapter in that. But, yeah. I mean, batteries are pretty good.
Right, but I think at some point it's going to be a thing where it's like, hey, if you asked a guy 500 years ago if we'd have airplanes, he'd be like, no, that's ridiculous. And
500
so now,
years ago, no one was even like on that page. They were like, oh, you
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Is that like, do you think we're going to be able to make a metal tube that people can fly in? They'd be like, no, that's dumb.
Well,
that's why I think.
But a person 500 years ago never would have even considered, like, there's not even that idea. The only
okay, what if they call it a boat in the sky?
Right, but the only thing that they would be able to like liken that to is a bird. because they see
Exactly.
birds
So
flying.
they would say, no, that's not possible. The same way that maybe some people today would say, no, you can't make an infinite battery or
Sure, I get the point you're trying to make, but like it's all about what you know contextually. Like if like someone from 1200 who has no understanding of anything is different than someone 100 years ago who's like, oh, you know what, we're probably gonna get to the point. Like you and I, like if like me telling you, hey, we're gonna live on Mars one day. You're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. It makes more sense than flying to someone from 1200.
Well, but I mean, the concept isn't crazy. Just be like,
But
go
what I'm saying
fly
is
over the ocean.
it's all relative. It's all relative to like where you are in like the technological evolution, right?
Yeah, and I'm just saying things that seemed impossible before,
Right. Sure.
that everybody would have said, no, you dummy, that's not possible, became possible. So that's why I think, what may seem far-fetched today, like an infinite battery or something.
Yeah, I don't think an infinite kind of thing does seem far-fetched.
Okay.
I don't think that. Yeah.
Cool. We're optimists. Great.
We are. Maybe we shouldn't be, but we are. Which is just such a dope phrase.
Sounds very dumb.
Animal.
The Pokemon type.
Was stored in the very stuff of life. But Volta disagreed, arguing that it was the metal itself that made the leg twitch.
Huh.
Debate was eventually settled with Volta's groundbreaking experiment. He tested his idea with a stack of alternating layers of zinc and copper, separated by paper or cloth soaked in a saltwater solution. What happened in Volta's cell is something chemists now call oxidation and reduction. The zinc oxidizes, which means it loses electrons, which are in turn gained by the ions in the water.
How do we know that?
We know that now because we can, presumably experiment on and document result.
But how would you think to do that? Where it's like, oh, I want to prove this thing. Oh, give me that zinc. Give me that copper. Like, okay, let me make them oxidized. Like, why would you get to that?
I agree. It is fascinating that people this long ago were like, yo, let's try this out. Agreed. Fascinating.
Yeah. Hydrogen gas. Volta would have been shocked to learn that last bit. He thought the reaction was happening in the copper rather than the
What a dumbass. What a dumbass.
He's a straight up dipshit. Yeah.
Nonetheless, we honor Volta's discovery today by naming our standard unit of electric
Volt.
They've replaced the chemical solution with dry cells filled with chemical paste. But the principle is the same. A metal oxidizes, sending electrons to do some work before they are regained by a substance being reduced. But any battery has a finite supply of metal, and once most of it has oxidized, the battery dies. So rechargeable batteries give us a temporary by making the oxidation reduction process reversible.
Do you get it? Do you see what they're talking? Do you understand what they're saying?
No, because the actual method of this happening, I can look at a diagram and see oh, when these dots go across the light bulb, it makes the light bulb turn on. But the idea of I don't know what oxidize means.
So oxidizing, for lack of breaking that down, it's just getting it's forcing the electrons to go through the circuit. I guess, and when they go through the circuit, because of the paste in there, when they're forced to do that, right? When you're connecting the whole thing, because when you put a battery in something, the tips touch something, so you're closing the circuit, you're closing the loop.
I mean, honestly, the circuit thing is a concept that I never even, the loop, the circuit, that was a concept that I first kind of heard of when I moved into this house a few months ago. I never understood I'd heard the phrases circuit and circuit breaker and stuff like that, but I had no idea what the fuck it meant. So this whole idea of it going around or they're breaking a thing, I feel like I know absolutely nothing about this.
Well, all the negative, all the negatively charged, properties go around through the loop and back into the positive.
How do they do? How do they know to go there? How does that happen? What is that?
They kind of describe it. Let's see if we can get some more clarity here. Well, this is how the rechargeable batteries work. By introducing outside electricity, like the plug in your wall, right, by the outlet, you can then force all of these properties to go in reverse, which essentially charges the battery back up again.
I just don't get. Okay, so this oxidation thing, is it only happening like if I put AA batteries into a Game Boy? Is it only oxidizing when the Game Boy's on?
How
does it turn on and off?
It's probably always doing it really slowly, but when it's on, it's asking for more and increasing the rate of oxidation is what I imagine.
But is it opening a valve on the battery and like the oxidized?
It's just I believe. Yeah, that's a good question. I
just don't understand what gets them out of the battery and moving through the circuit. Like what tells them all it's like, well, time to go, you know?
So that has to probably do with like amps and wattage and all those metrics decide the force at which electricity needs to flow, how much, all that stuff, which, believe me, I watched the videos on and declared them insufficient educational materials for the purposes of our show.
Okay.
Direction with the application of electricity. Plugging in a charger draws the electricity from a wall outlet that drives the reaction to regenerate the metal, making more electrons available for oxidation the next time you need them.
So it is slowly oxidizing the metal inside the battery, right? And the recharging forces everything to go in reverse so that the metal is the electricity properties build the battery back up.
So it's fucking like rebuilding metal like a T-1000? Like I just don't...
No, it's not a Terminator thing. It is just rebuilding the electric properties of the metal within the battery. Because don't forget,
like
rechargeable
sci-fi.
batteries are made of different things than like, a Duracell, a regular old Duracell.
Okay.
Chargeable batteries don't last forever. Over time, the repetition of this process causes imperfections and irregularities in the metal's surface that prevent it from oxidizing properly. The electrons are no longer available to flow through a circuit, and the battery dies. Some everyday rechargeable batteries will die after only hundreds of discharge-recharge.
Okay.
While newer advanced batteries can survive and function for thousands.
So the yellow ones. You want to get a yellow one.
Yeah. You know how much power is in a yellow.
Oh, yeah. Thousands of power. Oh, but a red.
The red is just theoretical. It's not even...
Way to take advantage of motion to recharge your cell battery, like cars do, or fit solar panels somewhere on your device. Plugging your charger into the wall, rather than expending one battery to charge another, is your best bet to forestall that fatal bleep.
Well, there you have it. Batteries are kind of amazing.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, pretty kind of a struggle to understand that.
Yeah,
not by any fault of the video, just the concept is crazy to me. Like, it's hard if you can't see something, and like even though helpful diagrams and illustrations and all that, like I don't even know what it's just concepts to me. Like oxidation, like if I can't see, like something like kinetic energy. Like here's a great example: kinetic energy. I remember in 5th grade they were teaching us the difference between kinetic energy and something else. And
Potential?
kinetic energy, what's that? Potential. That might be it.
Yeah.
That's potential is like stasis in Breath of the Wild, right?
Sure.
Okay. So kinetic, I remember always being described as like if a ball is rolling down the hill and it hits another ball, or like two pool balls, it's like there's just motion and there's a stored up energy and that gets transferred, when it hits another thing like that. I can understand because it's like I can picture this ball rolling down the hill or the pool ball going across the table. This thing of like neutrons and oxidization, it's like it all just seems so, I know it's not theoretical, I know it's how this shit works, but it's just like very difficult for me to wrap my head around, Well,
I think you will do well to learn about static electricity because to me, while yes, reduction and oxidation for battery, understanding how a battery, discharges is confusing. When I was having serious static electricity issues during the winter in my house, and I read up about it and why it happens, and I think I have a really good understanding of why that happens now. So
it's crazy. Like, so you're talking about like static electricity issues with your house?
Yeah.
Because like when you say static electricity, the only things I can possibly think of related to that are like a balloon when like your hand gets the tingly stuff, you know,
Sure.
or if you're walking around in socks on carpet and you touch something metal and it zaps.
Yes.
Like, I didn't know that issues could arise from static electricity. I kind of assumed static electricity was like a novelty thing where it's just like, whoop, static electricity. I didn't know it like had other applications or.
What do you, when you say novelty, what do you mean novelty?
I didn't think the concept of static electricity existed outside of like balloons and, oh, I touched a metal thing and I got a little zap. I literally thought that was like the two things. I thought it was just those two things.
You thought it was just like a trick?
I thought it would, I mean, I knew that there was the science behind it, obviously, but I didn't know that static electricity played into things other than balloons or touching something. If you walk around
So
in
you
socks.
thought that's where it began and ended.
Yeah,
like
it was just a phenomenon. It was just a weird phenomenon that happens with balloons and socks. Like, I didn't know that there could be issues in a house with it or that it manifested in any ways outside of those very, oh, haha, how silly, little static electricity, you know?
Right. You just didn't realize it went a lot deeper than just that.
No, like when you just mentioned that we're going to go into static electricity, I almost thought like, oh, I thought we were going to go into like big things. I thought that this was just a little joke thing.
Oh no!
Like static
electricity is no joke, and it has fried a keyboard of mine.
Oh, well, it's very serious then.
It's a very serious matter.
You cherish those.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna watch another TED Ed that explains the science of static electricity. There's you, by the way.
Yeah. I know what I look like, Jeff. Yes.
I know when I'm looking in a mirror, damn it.
Yes. Is my webcam on twice?
One moment. You may be walking across a soft carpet and reaching for the door.
Yeah, this.
Suddenly, zap.
I mean, that's a little dramatic.
Yeah.
Like
I've
the
never
burn
read
on the
that.
hand, but I get what you're
Yeah.
saying, Ted Ed. Okay, here you go. Now, here is your atomic explanation.
Yes, explain.
Consist of three types of smaller particles: negatively charged electrons, positively charged protons, and neutral neutrons. Normally, the electrons and protons in an atom balance out, which is why most matter you come across is electrically neutral. But electrons are tiny and almost insignificant in mass, and rubbing or friction can give loosely bound electrons enough energy to leave their atoms and attach to others, migrating between different surfaces.
Hang on, pause.
So do you see what they're saying?
Kind of, but hang on. So an atom, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, the building block of matter, right?
Okay, keep going.
Okay. It
It's not a
consists of
building
an
block.
electron.
Is what
matter
we are
is made up of atoms, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and matter is made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons.
Atoms are, but yes.
Yes. So bear with me here. If electrons and protons and neutrons make up atoms, and atoms make up us and everything, and you're telling me here so far that you can just shake off neutrons, they can just fall off the atom. Is there any way that the atoms themselves fall apart and we could just Alex Mack into a puddle? Like, I know that's not the case, but like,
is that the next step? Like, why is it that
look,
it goes
in a Jenga tower, if each thing is three things and you take out one from a bunch of them, it's going to fall. If every atom is three things and you can just shake some of them off.
We are talking about items that are subatomic in size.
Right, but you add them all up and it makes us or
but
a
you add
tower.
a couple of quadrillion of them up. And
Right.
What this is demonstrating is that because electrons are essentially, they have a tough time hanging on, and they're barely there in a lot of ways, right?
But I'm freaked out of the idea that they can fall off. Like, I'm made of atoms, and if a third of all of my atoms can just be shook off.
What do you think happens to your skin cells and hair every day?
Well, I assume since that is actual matter, like hair and skin cells.
What are they made up of?
Atoms, but I assumed it'd be intact atoms and not ones where the neutrons got shook off. So now I'm afraid about neutrons getting...
You can't give atoms the same respect you give like tangible things that you can see. Like you can't.
But is an atom without a neutron? Is it an active atom? Does it hold up? Does it can it keep you together? Can it keep things together? Or, okay, if I took this computer mouse right now and I somehow found a way to extract every neutron out of all of its atoms, Is this thing still together, or is it porous? Is it falling apart?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what happens when you do that. You just change its atomic makeup. Maybe.
Yeah, but if you
I
took
don't know
out
what
a
happens.
third of it, if it's all atoms and you're taking out a third of it, I would think, like, wouldn't it be less...
It's different. It is different because you're not removing the atoms. You're changing the makeup of the atoms. And what the makeup of an atom is what defines it defines what the thing is. Like, that's why we have the periodic table, because the information included in the periodic table denotes the atomic makeup of all of these things.
I'm just freaked out of the concept of atoms with a third just falling off of atoms.
Don't
like
worry
that
about
illustration.
that.
Okay.
What you would for the purposes of understanding static electricity, what you need to learn and know and realize is that in this video, the electrons here are easily shake-offable.
Well, I'm going to have an existential crisis just imagining all of my electrons falling off and then I'm just a puddle.
I mean, I could live with that.
Different surfaces. When this happens, the first object is left with more protons than electrons.
So there's an imbalance in protons and electrons because electrons have shaken off.
But you're still like...
So it's positive.
Like your brain signals are still going to your limbs and stuff, right?
Yeah,
like
you're
it's not like-
fine. You're
Okay.
fine. It's talking about the electrons that you've shaken off. It's not saying you have started to unravel the fabric of your existence.
That's what I'm worried about.
No, that is not a thing that static electricity is in jeopardy of doing to you,
Why?
dude.
I can't get over just the idea of like parts of your atoms just, oh, I guess I'll leave you.
Oh, gosh.
Can you grow
yeah.
them back? Do electrons grow back?
Growing, I'm not sure that's the word, but watch.
Positively charged, while the one with more electrons accumulates a negative charge. This situation is called a charge imbalance, or net charge separation. But nature tends...
See, here's that theme again where Mother Nature desires nothing but equilibrium.
Okay.
So, when one of these newly charged bodies comes into contact with another material,
What do you think happens?
Does it zap them all back into you?
the mobile electrons will take the first chance they get to go where they're most
What the fuck?
off the negatively charged object, or jumping on.
So you can just fucking Luke Skywalker just force pull matter into your body by touching something. And it just, it just like refills your electron meters.
You aren't doing it. It is because you are positively charged and you're interacting with a thing that's negatively charged. And
it just sucks them back into the atoms? Does it only do one electron per
what
atom?
the equilibrium is desiring. And that equilibrium is what creates the coming together is what creates the static shock.
How do they know where to go, the electrons? How do they know which ones, which atoms?
They desire balance.
How the fuck?
Well, they're not exactly aware. It's just how it is.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
And this quick movement of electrons,
See?
called static discharge, is what we recognize as that sudden
Again, the burns are not accurate.
Sure,
But here we go.
This process doesn't happen with just any objects. Otherwise, you'd be getting zapped all the time. Conductors like metals and salt water tend to have loosely bound outer electrons, which can easily flow between molecules. On the other hand, insulators like plastics, rubber, and glass have tightly bound electrons that won't readily jump to other atoms. Static buildup is most likely to occur when one of the materials involved is an insulator. When you walk across a rug, electrons from your body will rub off onto it. Insulating wool will resist losing its own electrons. Although your body and the rug together are still electrically neutral, there is now a charge polarization between the two. And when you reach to touch the doorknob, zap! The metal doorknob's loosely bound electrons hop to your hand to replace the electrons your body has lost. When it happens in your bedroom, it's a minor nuisance. But in the great outdoors, it can be a terrifying, destructive force of nature. In certain conditions, charge separation will occur in clouds. We don't know exactly how this happens. It may have to do with the circulation of water droplets and ice particles within them. Regardless, the charge imbalance is neutralized by being released towards another body, such as a building,
No shit.
a giant spark, that we know as lightning.
It's the same concept with
There you
lightning
go.
and fucking
Bringing it all back.
static electricity.
And can strike the same place more than once.
So that's the takeaway.
crazy.
The takeaway in how I designed our lesson plan is that lightning and static electricity are fundamentally the same thing.
It's just a much larger scale example of the same concept.
And that's the thing too, right? Like in the Ben Franklin video, they talk about how the idea, like everyone was fucking around with little lightning experiments, like, killing sheep or burning their wiener on it or whatever they were doing. And they're like, well, this certainly looks like the junk that comes out of the sky when it rains sometimes. And
The Age of Enlightenment.
That is the Age of Enlightenment. Burning your dick equals lightning. So that is that's what I learned from all this. How do you feel about it now that we've taken a very strange walk through the land of electricity?
So completely different view of the origins and discovery in the Ben Franklin story. That is very I have a much better understanding of that. Also, honestly, my biggest takeaway, I think I learned a lot of things during this. My biggest takeaway is that water conducts electricity. Like I feel like that is a major thing that like is not just some like, lofty scientific concept. That is something that like I could think about when I'm wet.
So
Well,
now
I mean,
I cut to the visual of you getting out of the shower next time you take one, and you just sort of looking at an outlet a little differently than you looked at
well,
it.
that's the thing is like, because I feel like I knew these ideas separately from each other.
Yeah.
Like I said, like, oh, it does that thing in BioShock, or you're not supposed to touch an outlet when you're wet.
I'll never look at BioShock the same, for sure.
But like, I feel like there's just this overarching concept now tying all these disparate things that I understood before, that like it's not just random like, oh, here's 20 things I know. It's, oh, here's 20 things I know that are governed by this principle of water conducing electricity.
Yeah.
Like that is the thing I never put together. And it's that's kind of an aha moment for me, honestly. Like that's my big takeaway out of today's lesson.
The thing that I take away is that nature will always find a way to keep itself balanced, which I think is an amazing sort of idea and shapes our world. And I think just again, the notion of every child in school assuming that Ben Franklin was severely electrocuted by lightning being a hilarious visual for me.
Yeah. And I was just completely way off with my understanding of that, because I really thought that was about like, oh, look, we can harness this and power things. I thought it was like him showing people an electrified key and being like, now we can have street lamps, like,
yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah, I genuinely have learned, I think, a decent amount. Static electricity still is harder for me to grasp just because it's so subatomic and hard for me to picture, like, how the fuck do we know that? Like, the idea of atoms, I mean, atoms could be a whole episode that I just don't, that just seems crazy. Atoms seem crazy.
Atoms do seem crazy. I agree with that.
Yeah, but I think that illustration helped, that last video we watched, and the tying lightning to static electricity of just like, I honestly, if you asked me how lightning happened before this episode, I knew it was just some weird cloud shit and like, oh, there's some sort of something going on in the clouds and that happens. Like, I would not even begin to start to explain how. And now, even though I don't fully understand the atom stuff, I would be able to at least have the like, oh, some clouds are this way and some clouds are that way. And if it gets all jumbly, it has to like, squirt it out,
Yeah, I mean, that's verbatim, I think.
I don't mean to get all scientific on it.
No, I know. Come on, there's laymen here, bro. Okay,
Right, sorry.
please, doctor. This has been a delight. Don't forget, this will be on the test, okay? So this will be on the test. I want you to make sure you keep it in mind. There will be a final exam. Just to reiterate, if you do pass that final exam, there is a MacGruber Blu-ray in your future. I know It's the one that got away. This is number
man.
1. You could have, I know you've got 15, 16, 17 copies of MacGruber on Blu-ray.
It's
but you
24,
never
but that
forget
was
your
the first one. I bought
You
that the
never
day it came
forget your
out.
first.
I drove to a
okay?
Best Buy to get that
I
day
just-
one.
Sometimes I talk to it. I just want you to know.
I get it. I know.
Sometimes
it
I
used to be
tell it-
mine. I know.
I tell it things, you know.
Yeah, I know.
All right, it's still in here. We're good.
Okay. It's not Eco anymore.
It's no longer Eco. I made that swap.
Do I get your copy of Eco too if I pass the
No,
test?
actually, hell no. Even though I don't know how I would ever play that again. No, you cannot. You cannot have my
I've
copy.
got a
of
PS2
Eco.
right here.
Hey, buddy, this was a ton of fun. I'm looking forward
was.
to next week, which I don't think we're going to tease the topic just yet. But,
Don't tell me either. I don't know.
Yeah, not going to tell you. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Just a heads up, the first episode of Back to School is completely free, but afterwards, you're going to need premium to see where this rabbit hole goes. Anyway, thanks so much to Jan for producing. Thank you, Dan Reichert, and we'll see you next time.
How do we know that? How the fuck do we know that? How the fuck do we know that? How? How do we know that? What the fuck? How the fuck?